over about the last half decade, I think you'd be hard-pressed to find something that fans loathe more than the 550 horsepower package that was used at the end of the Gen 6 era. A little bit of an explanation on this one. Back in 2018, when there was 750 horsepower for all the races, there was a bit of a conundrum for NASCAR. The intermediate package sucked, and the racing that year was pretty awful for the first half. So, NASCAR did what has become relatively common in the last decade or so, and started testing stuff in the All-Star race. And in the 2018 All-Star race, they had a new package. It was low horsepower, really high downforce, a 6-inch spoiler with 12-inch ears on the back, and this was made in an effort to make a race in the All-Star race that had been falling off good again, as well as to see if they could maybe find something that would work. Well, you know what? For the All-Star race, it did work. It made the racing basically a mini pack race. 3 and 4 wide racing was a common thing to see, and on top of that, there was good action throughout the night. A lot of fans had said, this is good. We can have this as the All-Star race. But NASCAR, of course, would go a little too far. NASCAR would put a tapered spacer into the engine that would restrict to 550 horsepower, and on top of that, they would have high downforce for the car setup as well. Now, you might be asking, how does Kansas Speedway really play into this? Well, I'm going to tell you, because for the first part of 2019, for the first couple races, this package was completely splitting everyone down the middle. The racing on the 1.5 miles was a little bit better, but at the same time, you would see that there was different guys getting bogged down and whatnot, and so fans were not completely sold on it. Kansas is where fans saw the best showing of this car package, and in a way, it gave a lot of extra time to NASCAR to have the 550 package. In 2019, Kansas had their first race of the year as a night race. It was relatively lower temperatures, there was no sun on the track, and based on common knowledge, it would seem that this would mean it'd be a relatively single file on the bottom, high grip kind of night. But for some reason, it was the inverse, and the 550 package had great side-by-side racing throughout long runs as well as on the restarts. And this kept the action up all night. It was exactly what NASCAR had intended for it to do. And this all culminated in a battle at the end where Alex Bowman would lead over Brad Keselowski. Bowman at this time looking for his first win, Keselowski a relatively high-profile driver at the time. And with it, they had a great side-by-side battle until finally Keselowski had to trick Bowman out of running in his fast line to get by him. Overall, the night was a success, and it really gave the 550 package the highest real approval rating that fans probably had given it so far in its existence. This, in my opinion, is what made the 550 package work in NASCAR for as long as it did. Fans, like I said, were 50-50 before this night, and even some of the supporters against it the most, guys like me, were really impressed with what we saw. Unfortunately, like I said, that's the high point. The 550 package saw a gradual decline over the next year and a half with fans and competition alike. Fans weren't crazy because we could never reach the high of that Kansas race, and we just saw mediocre, bogged down racing with dirty air playing even more of a factor than before. The drivers hated it because for the most part it was full throttle racing, but you couldn't get a big enough run set up to have it be like a pack race, so drivers basically were just flat-footing it around like they were on a little circle track. In 2020, NASCAR decided to start scaling the usage back at shorter tracks and road courses so that they could get better racing there, and for the most part, it worked. And by the end of 2020, when they got to Kansas, the public perception was at a tipping point. And this, the Fall Kansas race of 2020, in my opinion, is the race that killed the 550 package. Now, what do I mean by this? Of course, 2020 was a rough year for everybody, and NASCAR was no different, but on many different facets as well. The pandemic hit and basically washed everyone back to zero. And so, for NASCAR fans going through the pandemic races and everything going on, it was a watered-down version of the sport. And after some of the controversies that year, and the newest of those being at Talladega with Denny Hamlin winning in a questionable call at the end, NASCAR fans were understandably frustrated and not in the most forgiving state. So this Kansas race goes on. I can tell you from being there, it was bitterly cold, and we saw a typical 550 race for the 2 stages to start out the race. There were some good runs here and there, guys who could make their way up a little bit. On the restarts, they were 3 and 4 wide. It was a lot of spectacle to start off with, but it wasn't something that was great by any means, especially for a track like Kansas, who had proven to be really good in the past couple years. The final stage held the biggest disappointment, and this, in my opinion, killed the 550 package. In the closing laps, Joey Logano was leading. And let's be real, Joey Logano is not a popular driver. Kevin Harvick, another driver who's not really that popular, caught up to Joey Logano pretty quickly with about 20-30 to go, and was immediately bogged down about 8 car lengths back by the dirty air, and he couldn't do anything. Lap after lap, Harvick would try to dive into the corner, but could never get close enough to Logano to even think about making a move. It was frustrating from the stands, it was frustrating from TV, and I have to assume Kevin Harvick was frustrated with it. I mean, even Alex Bowman, the guy who nearly won in 2019 spring race, even he got up into the battle, and the same thing happened to him when he got to about 5 to 8 car lengths behind Kevin Harvick. He just got bogged down, slowed down, and backed it up. The whole time, dirty air refused to let anybody pass. And dirty air is always going to be a problem, but in this regard, it was the worst that most NASCAR fans had ever seen it be. And ultimately, they finished 1-2-3 that way, Logano winning over Harvick and Bowman. Logano, being the least popular driver in NASCAR, made it even more of a gut punch. Even those who were the biggest supporters of the 550 package were at this point saying, it's enough, time to finally get rid of it. And I would say that this started the tumble for the package that led to it being taken off the schedule even more in 2021, and then basically scrapped for the next gen car when that was the initial plan for it. So that's just my sort of small opinion of the day, is that I think that Kansas both started and pretty much effectively ended the 550 package. Now I want to hear from you. What were your thoughts on the 550 package now that we're about half a year removed from racing with it? Did you like it? Do you miss it? Do you hate it? Let me know down in the comments below. And while you're at it, leave a like on this video, share this video, subscribe to my channel for more great NASCAR content for the rest of the year and for a lot longer. And to all my channel members, thank you so much for your support. So until next time, have a good one.